Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Hyperion Hub, your meeting place for all things Disney. Now your hosts.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Hyperion Hub, your meeting place for all things Disney. I'm John Alois and joined by Sean Degenhart.
Greetings.
And John Redlingshafer.
Hello everybody.
We hope you're having a great week. We are on social media. You can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter. We're at Hub Hyperion. We'd love to hear from you. Please send us an email at podcast@thehyperionhub.com. You can also record a voice recording and send it to us that way as a message, and we'll play it on the show. Thank you to everyone who has rated and reviewed the show on Apple Podcasts. We'd love for you to do that if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts so more people can find the show. We like to start things off with our Disney view, and for that, let's throw it over to John.
Guys, I got great news. Recently, we heard from Disney Cruise Line that the Disney Wish is charging ahead, and we are looking at an opportunity to start booking cruises on what is going to turn into one of the best cruise line ships on the seas. I can only tell you what I learned in 30 minutes. If you want me to go through that whole spiel, I have the time, but I won't, I promise. But I have to say, the Disney Wish is just exactly what you think it would be. It is a step into Cinderella's world the moment you come onto the ship. A statue of Cinderella is there to greet you with crystal all over those first few decks that you see, and really, they're building on what the Disney Cruise Line already has accomplished. It's a balance of family, couples, and enjoyment for all, no matter what your level of Disney love is. Whether it be actually riding a ride on the top deck called Aqua Mouse with what appears to be graphics and a storyline versus the aqueduct that you see on the other boats, which is just a water-powered slide, all the way to an infinity pool for the adults only section. It looks like a beautiful collection of all of the pros that you already see on Disney cruise ships and taking it that further step forward. Guys, did you get a chance to see any of that video?
I did. There are 3 restaurants that I was really impressed with the idea of. There's a Frozen-themed restaurant, a Marvel-themed restaurant, and I believe Star Wars as well. Along with the standard restaurants, I think Palo is still going to be part of the ships. A lot of cool stuff to do. Yeah, it looks amazing. I mean, they've been talking about the new ships for a while now, and for us to finally start to see what they're going to look like is pretty cool for a fan.
I've got the video queued up. I've watched the first 3 or 4 minutes and then got pulled away, so I am anxious to get back to look, especially after hearing you guys talk about it when I get that.
All I want you to listen for is the way into the Oceaneers Club. That's what I want you to listen to.
Okay.
All right, well, now it's time to get back to our conversation with Drew Hayashida, which began last week. This is the second part of our interview with him. Once again, Drew is a cast member. He's a Disney studio tour guide. And, of course, he doesn't represent the Disney company in this interview. We'll pick it up with Drew telling us more stories about the studio and the studio lot. Legends Plaza, such a remarkable place. I mean, I was able to walk through there and place my hands on, in other people's hand molds. It leads to one of the most iconic Disney buildings ever built. Everyone knows the Team Disney building where the 7 dwarfs are holding up the building because literally they helped build the studio lot. What's that building like? Is it an office building? Is it filled with creatives, who can do whatever they want to their cubes? Describe it for us.
The Team Disney Michael D. Eisner building, so it's commonly known as the 7 Dwarfs building because the 7 Dwarfs are holding the roof of the corporate offices. Just like you said, without Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs that came out in 1937, there would be no studio lot. It was because of the profits from that movie, they were able to buy the 51 acres in Burbank. So when that building was built in 1990, they wanted to kind of pay homage to that. It was designed by Michael Graves. So those of you on the East Coast, the Swan and the Dolphin Hotels, same guy. He designed the Team Disney Michael D. Eisner building. The inside the building, it's pretty officey, it's pretty corporate, but what I will say, it's changed over the years. Again, it opened in 1990, so at that time, it was inside, it was kind of gray and a lot of cubicles, and it was very kind of corporate-y and officey, which, yeah, it's the corporate headquarters, sure. Except for, like, at the time, Michael Eisner's office was really nice and, those kinds of things. But since that time, they've done a lot of redesign. The studio marketing is in there, and their area is so cool. It's so open. They have a wonderful break room. And because they're in marketing, they actually have a Wreck-It Ralph game there, like an actual game that works, like a coin-op. They have standees that change every time a new movie comes out. So it's always kind of fun for the employees to walk around and see that kind of stuff. It's a big open area. When Lucasfilm was acquired, a big portion of Lucasfilm is now in that building. Wow. In the lobby, and I've been able to go into the lobby of Lucasfilm, they have an Emmy because of the Star Wars show, the internet show, got an Emmy. And but they also have all these figurines and lightsabers and stuff in the lobby. They have a Yoda, full-blown Yoda, and C-3PO, and R2-D2 in there. So I mean, it's really cool. And then when they launched Disney Plus main offices, I think, are still in there. So and of course, Bob Chapek's office is in there, and all the upper executives are in that building as well, for the most part. They have a rotunda, which is on the 5th floor in the front section. So behind Dopey, essentially on the 5th floor, is an executive dining room. And that's where and I've been there and I've eaten there. The food's really good. I've seen all kinds of celebrities and executives have proper meetings up there. And Bob Iger has his own table, which, when he leaves at the end of the year, I'm sure is going to go to somebody else. I don't know where Chapek's table is. He may have a different one. I don't know. But Iger had a table that he always ate at, a regular table. So, that was, that kind of stuff. So it's an office building, but there's still parts of really fun stuff. One of the things I'll tell you too, which I think is unique, and again, I worked at NBC Universal. People who work at Disney work there longer than most other corporations because they're fans. So at any Team Disney, absolutely, but any of the buildings I've ever visited, there's, stuff, Disney stuff. There's like Tsum Tsums, and there's toys, and you'll see stuff. Consumer products is like crazy because they get samples and stuff all the time. So you see like toys and dresses and crap all the time. So they're fans, man. And so that's kind of fun is to see all that stuff. And oh man, they're fans. I have Tsum Tsums too, all that kind of fun stuff. And you see that in Team Disney. You absolutely do at the little cubes and stuff. So it's again, it is an office building. If you ever visit, please do not go inside the Team Disney building. But having said that, everybody in there is really into what they're doing. And it's the vibe, the vibe on the Walt Disney Studio lot, I believe, is very different. The culture, people say hello to you who don't know you. They'll say hello walking down Mickey Avenue. They'll say hello to you on the elevator. I remember Bob Iger at a coffee, he used to do what's called executive coffees. He'd just have a bunch of employees there in the morning and just answer questions. And he said, one of the things that's crazy is, like, I'm just a human being. If you see me in the elevator, you don't have to take 2 steps to the right. You can say hi. It's okay. I'm an employee too. And he's true to that word, man. I see him all the time, and he said hello, and I'm sure Chapek's the same. So it's the vibe overall is really, to me, positive. I'm sure you'll talk to other people, say others, but my perspective is that it's always been a positive environment.
I've been able to visit the campus once, I think, and I saw you giving a tour, Drew, and they looked like they were having a great time. But it is such a beautiful campus. Just to walk down the sidewalk and see, the intersection of, Mickey Drive and Dopey, whatever at that intersection with the fire hydrant and
Mickey Avenue and Dopey Drive, is that what
yeah, Mickey Avenue and Dopey Drive. Just beautiful. And, the awnings that, were designed specifically for the animators to be able to adjust the light coming into the room. And it is just gorgeous.
It's a great campus. And that was all Walt's. I mean, he had the entire lot designed with the idea of understanding creative people, and creative people need to go outside. I mean, there's pictures of animators sketching against a tree outside in front of the animation building. And there are pictures of animators and ink painters and even engineers sitting on the grass, just, talking and interacting with each other, because Walt understood that ideas come from anywhere. You could be having lunch, one of the things, there's one commissary. There are other places where you could have, a bite to eat here and there. And now there's the rotunda. But back in those days, there was just that one lunch commissary. And, he understood that, hey, Joe's an animator and, Sally's an engineer, and they're going to have lunch together. And Joe's going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm having a real big problem with this character. I can't seem to figure it out. And Sally would be like, oh, have you thought about blah? Oh my gosh. Just that kind of energy, which is something that Pixar picked up on. And that is how their campus is built, with that very idea where you just have spontaneous creativity. But Walt intuitively understood this. And the campus was designed that way. It's very unique in Hollywood, very unique.
Well, and I think as we see 2020 into 21 now, I hope that doesn't go away. I think for the most part, all of us on this screen have experienced a new work life, some drastic versus others. And that's, maybe my one fear or hesitation that we're going to see, and hope that we don't, but it's tough. I collaborated with coworkers and co-counsel in cases over a computer. Maybe that's what we're going to have to do to a degree. But you know what? Having a beautiful campus, outdoor spaces, I really do hope that tradition continues as best as they can. And, everybody says 2021 is going to be a great year. I hope that we all see that in our own workplaces, but especially there, because all of the stories you hear about that very scenario of, well, I just happened to talk to, Sam in marketing, who came up with this because he was sitting across the table from Louis, having lunch, or walked past them as they were leaning up against a tree. That I guess it's my own editorial of saying I hope that tradition continues, and maybe of all places, you dream that it's there.
I can't imagine that that's going to go away. It's part of the culture of the studio lot. It's kind of part of the culture of the company for the most part, in my experience. And it's when I worked at NBC Universal, which was a great company. I'm not just saying that either. It was a great company, but they're not as relationship based as Disney is. And I do chalk that up to Walt and what the environment that he really tried to create. And I think that they tried to continue that in the 70s to mix results, but that continued through the 80s and through today. It's unique, and it's encouraged. In fact, they redesigned the Roy E. Disney building 3 years ago, I think, for that very reason, because it was designed to do traditional animation or 2D animation, as some people call it. And then when they got into CG with Chicken Little and so forth, they had to make darker areas, because that's how you do CG animation. So they had to section off the cubes a little bit more and all this other stuff. And it just became much colder. And not to mention that, and I think a lot of Disney fans know about this, there was a huge change in the direction creativity went to the executives and not to the directors of the movies. Not to say the executives were bad. It's just there's a sensibility they didn't understand. So when they wanted to open it up, and especially after Tangle was a big success, they're like, this is too cold. So they decided to they closed the building, for like a year, and they redid everything, opened everything up, and really created situations, areas, open areas so you can interact. The conference rooms weren't just boxes anymore. They're glass doors and glass windows so you can see each other, so it feels open. And I've all the animators I've talked to have all said the same thing, like, oh my gosh, it's like a breath of fresh air. When I came back to work, it was clunky at first because they're not used to it, but man, this is better. I feel more open. I feel I can be more creative. And again, I'll say this forever. That goes back to Walt, man. He understood that kind of stuff. And now people are going like, oh yeah, that's right. We could do that.
Collaboration, yes, is key. Are there any spots on the lot that harken back to the 40s and 50s? And I guess I'm primarily thinking about the TV shows that were shot there, like the Mickey Mouse Club or Zorro, or any of those 60s movies, the Tommy Kirk and Annette Funicello films. Are there any spots that still exist somewhere in a corner? You know that something was shot there, or a story was told there. Anything like that?
Okay, so there's good news, bad news to all this stuff. I mean, times change, and there used to be a huge backlot which had a Western Street. There was a Latin Street, which is where Zorro was shot. Residential Street, where Absent Minded Professor and Shaggy Dog and all those kinds of things were shot. There was a Business Street, which is where things like Something Wicked This Way Comes was shot. And
was that like a square, like a
it was a town square? Yeah. You know what was funny about that too is that's when Michael Eisner and Frank Wells took over the company in '84. That's where they had their introductory meeting. They were literally on the bandstand in the town square, and that's where they told everybody who they were. But again, through the years, they found that you can either shoot on location, or you can, go to Warner Brothers and shoot on their back lot. Desperate Housewives was shot on part of Universal's back lot, that kind of stuff. Now we do have another back lot up in Golden Oak Ranch, up in the Santa Clarita Valley, and that's a whole other story. But it was. I talked to a lot of people, on the lot when they got rid of the back lot, and a lot of people were sad about that kind of stuff. And, we have a parking structure where they shot Zorro, which is called the Zorro parking structure for that reason. Kind of a nod. That's the one cool thing about what Disney does. They always try to nod to the history somehow. For instance, when Annette Funicello passed away, they shot the original Mickey Mouse Club, 1954-55 in Soundstage 1. And so they renamed that the Annette Funicello Soundstage in honor of her and all the Mouseketeers, honestly. But those are kind of the only indicators. Besides that, though, the good news is things like dedicating Annette Funicello Soundstage and Julie Andrews Soundstage 2, because they shot Mary Poppins and Princess Diaries there. But the archives were able to, just retrieve so many props and items through the years. And they continue to find stuff by accident that are tucked away in corners and stuff, not only on the studio lot, but all over Hollywood. And they document all that stuff. So they are constantly looking out for classic props and items from these movies. They have the Blackbeard's ghost painting, in the archives, Peter Ustinov's, image on there. One of the weird ones is Madonna's image, because Evita, the movie, was a Touchstone film. So they have the Madonna as Evita painting, They also have Robin Williams from Flubber, because they had to make a maquette of him because, he was working with, this character was working with all these chemicals and stuff like that. So they had to make a fake one. They have this really scary Robin Williams dressed up as, the professor in there. So that's, they have stuff like that. So they are the keepers of all of that stuff. And what I love about what they do, the archives do, is they try, because they have several warehouses. They won't tell me where they are, by the way, because they're scared I'm going to go over there and like try to knock on the door. But they have warehouses of stuff. They have 3 of the love bugs. Like they have huge things, They have part of the set, the Black Pearl set from the second Pirates movie in there. Like they have all of this huge stuff, right down to really, really tiny things like the original Mary Poppins Globe. And I'm sure you've seen the Disney Plus show. They talk about it.
Prop culture.
They had, which is so, I love that. By the way, I hope they continue doing stuff because I'm like crying through half of those episodes.
Yep.
But, that just shows you how much care they have. And, not to disparage NBC Universal, but I got to see their archives and they have one person working it. And think about this, NBC Universal, Back to the Future, Jaws.
Johnny Carson. I mean,
Yeah. All this stuff. And they're still kind of, and I met a wonderful person who works there, so it's not on her. It's just the company doesn't understand how to really categorize all that stuff. Disney was really the first company to kind of do that. And so I take, and I know pretty much all the archives people, and they are extraordinary folks, and they care, man. They really, really, truly care about this stuff. And that's what's cool. So whenever I get to see them on occasion and they'll go like, guess what we found? We found this memo from Walt, it says so-and-so. And I'm like, really? You're like, that's super cool, So they're into this stuff, man. Becky Klein and her group, they're
It gets back to what you were saying, Drew, that they are fans. They are history buffs. They love where they work. They love the company. They love what it stands for. And why wouldn't you be excited to find a memo from Walt Disney if you're a true fan? It could say, we need to rethink an extra stall in the bathroom. But you'd still be thrilled to say, Walt had a great idea for a third stall down the hall,
When Dave Smith started the archives, he kept coming, understand, it was just one guy for, I don't know how many years doing it. Before he was allowed to hire another person, somebody like a Robert Tiemann, who's a friend of mine, and Becky Klein, who started off as an assistant. And then there was just the 3 of them for another like 10 years. So he would just put stuff in file boxes. I'm serious, man. It's so funny. He would just mark them like, Walt's stuff or, Disneyland, but it wouldn't be detailed. Like you wouldn't know what was in there. So they're still going through a lot of those file boxes and documenting stuff to this day. And they'll find this thing that just says Walt's box. And it's like this, like super important, like check or, like Roy, wrote this, something like just changes our perception of what we thought we knew. And they're like, he just like threw it in because Dave in his head was like, I'm going to go back to it. I'm going to get to it. But then as soon as that happens, then 50 other things come across. Okay, wait, you're going to go crazy about this. So I got to tell you, and this is for the collectors out there. I remember going to the archives once. I hope they don't get mad at me for saying that. I went to the archives once, and this guy had a dolly of 3 bins, like these plastic bins, and they're pretty good size and they're heavy, right? And I remember I knew one of the assistants at the time over in archives, and she was like, "Oh boy," and the guy, they had to have it signed and all this stuff. And I'm like, "What's all that? I mean, can you tell me?" And she's like, "Those are pins." I'm like, "I'm sorry," and she said that the parks around the world they don't always succeed, but they try to send the archives one of every single pin that's created. And they have to think about this. They have to document. This is the archives. This is what they do. They have to document it. If there's an artist, they have to find out who the artist is for each and every pin. The number, if it's a limited edition. Think about that for a second. That's their job, right? Wow. And this happens like once a month or something. And somebody has to do that. I have so much respect for what they do because people don't think about that. Everyone thinks, oh, they have all this cool stuff. They do, and they're excited about it. But there's this other aspect of the job where they have to document it, and it has to be right. It can't just be like, I think this is from blah, blah, blah. They have to know. And if they don't know, they have to contact people to find out where these things come from. So it's just, I was looking at that. I'm a casual pin collector. So I'm looking at that going like, wow.
Okay, well, Drew, thank you so much for joining us. One final question. Favorite attraction?
My goodness. Yeah, it depends on my mood. I will say that I love Peter Pan. That flight over London, I think that's a sentimental thing. Like when I was a kid, that was such a remarkable thing. So that always stays with me. I love miniatures. So Storybook Land, especially at night, people overlook this attraction, but Storybook at night with the lights on of the little houses, and you can hear the three little pigs sing, and you hear the midnight bell on Cinderella's castle and all that kind of stuff, man. I love that energy of that particular attraction. So I like kind of the slower things, as much as I love Galaxy's Edge. Don't get me wrong. Like Rise of the Resistance. Wow. One of the best things ever. And I love Star Tours and all these other things, but in terms of me, just as a Disney person, I think those two really do it for me. I just love those.
Well, we look forward to hoping to catch you on a tour someday, and just want to thank you again for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this two-part interview with Drew Hayashida. We thank him for coming on the Hyperion Hub. We would love to hear from you. Send us an email at podcast@thehyperionhub.com. You can find us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. We're at Hub Hyperion. If you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review us so more people find the show. Have a great week, everybody.
We're glad you could join us. We'd love to hear from you. You can email or send us a recorded audio message at podcast@thehyperionhub.com. Find us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The Hyperion Hub is not affiliated with the Walt Disney Company or its subsidiaries. We'll meet you next time at the Hyperion Hub.